Episode 2 opens with a deceptively cheerful 1950s intro. Pastel colors, smiling faces, and the sweet song A Smile in a Ribbon by Patience and Prudence. But behind that innocent tone lies Derry's entire curse. Every frame hides a clue, every image a prophecy. The Paul Bunyan statue rises in construction, the same one destined to come alive decades later and terrorize Richie Tozier, while protesters below sense something's off, even if they can't explain it. This statue isn't just a landmark, it's a symbol of how Derry's pride always turns monstrous. The scene glides over a red bridge, kids diving into the river, and then a little girl peering into a sewer drain beside a missing child poster. Suddenly, the tone shifts. Those two yellow eyes glow in the darkness. They're not just Pennywise's eyes, they're the deadlights. It's true cosmic form. That's the show's way of saying, this isn't just another clown story. We're going deeper into the entity that lives beyond human understanding. Next, we see Juniper Hill Asylum, drawn like a friendly postcard, hiding decades of abuse. It's where Lily is sent, just like so many others who saw too much. Then the camera reveals the well house, perched on top of Derry's original sewer system, the heart of its lair, and in its window, again, those haunting yellow eyes. The moment feels still until the whole scene ignites in a nuclear explosion. And through the burning sky, a single red balloon floats upward. It's a perfect metaphor. The Cold War's paranoia is just another flavor of fear for it to feed on. The explosion cuts to a classroom filled with children doing duck and cover drills, while Bert the Turtle smiles from a poster, a direct nod to Matcher and the Turtle, its eternal opposite. And there, beside the film projector, we see a white-gloved hand turning the reels. It's Pennywise controlling the illusion, the same way he hijacked a projector in the 2017 film. The message is chillingly clear. While Derry's kids are taught to fear nuclear fire, the real danger is crawling beneath their town. The sequence ends with the same eerie calm it began with, pastel smiles fading into darkness. What looks like a nostalgic opening is really a confession. Derry is already infected. Fear is its religion, and Pennywise doesn't just haunt it, he runs it. The moment the intro fades, the series dives into Derry's dark history, a timeline of blood, denial, and repetition. We see flashes of the Bradley Gang Massacre of 1935, one of the most infamous events in Stephen King's lore. What looks like a simple gangster shootout turns out to be another feeding frenzy, orchestrated by IT itself. The gang is wiped out by the townspeople, normal citizens who suddenly turn violent, united by a hatred they can't explain. And in the chaos, the camera catches a glimpse of Pennywise among the crowd, casually participating in the slaughter. That's the terrifying truth about Derry. It doesn't always kill with claws or teeth. Sometimes, it just whispers in people's minds until they do it for him. Then, the story jumps back another 27 years, to the Kitchener Ironworks explosion, a tragedy mentioned only in passing in the IT films, now fully realized. On that day, the town gathered for an Easter egg hunt, and when the factory blew, dozens of children were incinerated. In the smoke, one figure appeared, a man in a rabbit suit, a grotesque Easter mascot turned omen of death. The show's creators are adapting King's interludes from the novel, The Hidden Stories that revealed Derry's long relationship with mass death. Each disaster has its own pattern, its own ritual, and each time Pennywise is there to feast. These flashbacks aren't just for lore. They explain why Derry feels cursed, why fear here never fades. Every generation buries its trauma under new asphalt, pretending the past didn't happen. But IT remembers. Every 27 years, something reawakens. An explosion, a massacre, a missing child. It's not just horror, it's history repeating itself. And that's the genius of Welcome to Derry. It's not just showing us monsters, it's showing us the machinery of denial. The people of Derry rebuild, repaint, and move on, convinced their tragedies are accidents. But if you look closely at the murals, the monuments, even the smiles, its fingerprints are everywhere. After the eerie classroom fades out, the story snaps back to reality, or what passes for it in Derry. We find Ronnie Grogan and Lily, still haunted by the massacre at the movie theater, now watching as Derry turns on one of its own. The town's grief has curdled into blame, and their target is Hank, Ronnie's father. Two police officers sit outside his apartment, smoking, joking crudely that maybe Hank ate the kids. It's dark humor, but in Derry, that's how denial works. People laugh at horror so they don't have to face it. The show paints this scene with quiet dread. It's not about gore, it's about how evil gets normalized. Inside, Hank's mother defends him with that weary tone only Derry survivors have. The certainty that her family is innocent, paired with the knowledge that truth doesn't matter here. Hank's alibi is simple. He was home watching The Andy Griffith Show, a symbol of pure American innocence, while outside, the real darkness spread. The irony couldn't be sharper. A family glued to a wholesome sitcom while the town they live in devours itself. Then, Ronnie's grandmother delivers a cutting line that defines the episode's theme. She scolds Ronnie for chasing Hollywood nonsense, accusing her of acting like Nora Charles, the fictional detective from The Thin Man. In that one line, the show merges fantasy and fear, a girl trying to seek the truth in a town that punishes curiosity. Derry doesn't want investigators, it wants silence. But the real gut punch comes when Hank calls Ronnie by her full name, Veronica Grogan. To casual viewers, it's just a name. But for readers of King's novel, it's a chilling Easter egg. Veronica Grogan was one of the children killed during IT's feeding cycle, part of the same tragic roster as Matthew Clemens and Georgie Denbrough. The moment reframes everything. The show isn't inventing new characters, it's resurrecting forgotten victims, giving faces and emotions to the brief names King only mentioned once. Ronnie isn't just a random protagonist, she's fated to become one of its earliest victims in the book's timeline. That revelation shifts the tone. What seemed like a story of suspicion and small-town hysteria becomes a slow march toward destiny. Ronnie's investigation into Derry's disappearances mirrors the Losers Club decades later. Kids poking into mysteries adults ignore, only to find the horror staring back. But unlike the Losers, Ronnie doesn't have the strength of friendship or belief yet. She's alone, carrying guilt, grief, and the knowledge that the adults in her life, the police, her grandmother, her neighbors, would rather invent a human villain than accept that something supernatural is eating their children. This is Derry's true evil, not the monster in the sewers, but the instinct to look away. The town doesn't just protect Aitamei, it works for it, and Hank's story is proof. The moment Derry points its finger at him, the truth dies quietly, one lie at a time. The episode widens its scope from the Grogan's tragedy to the Hanlon family, shifting focus from personal guilt to systemic rot. It's the early 1960s, a decade of supposed progress in America, but in Derry, the air still smells like segregation and silence. The Hanlons are among the few black families in town. Decent, hardworking, proud, and their very existence challenges Derry's illusion of normalcy. Beneath the polite smiles and tidy lawns, the town's racism festers like everything else Ite touches. We meet Will Hanlon, a young father and husband who tries to connect with his son, but carries the invisible scars of war. His time in Korea left him hardened, but it also made him unafraid. And in Derry, that's dangerous. Fear is the fuel it feeds on, and anyone who doesn't radiate it becomes a problem. Will's courage, his refusal to bow to hate, marks him as both a target and a future hero. We later learn that his son, Mike Hanlon, will inherit this quiet strength, eventually becoming the keeper of Derry's dark history and the last loser to stay behind. But before that legacy, the show grounds us in Will's world, the mundane racism of 1960s Maine. A white neighbor sneers, a cop lingers too long outside their home, a shopkeeper's smile curdles when money changes hands. These aren't just scenes of prejudice, they're symptoms of Derry's infection. Pennywise doesn't need to lift a finger when humans are already doing his work. Racism, cruelty, gossip. All of it generates fear, pain, and division. The emotional energy Ite thrives on. We hear JFK's name sprinkled through the episode, on newspapers, on lips, in framed portraits. The Hanlons see him as a sign of hope, a symbol of progress. If anybody's got a problem with us, Will says, they can take it up with JFK. It's defiance in its purest form, and irony too, because in Derry, no president, no law, no social movement ever reaches beneath the surface. Evil here is local, intimate, generational. The show subtly connects this to the cosmic struggle at the heart of IT. Will's sense of dignity is not just moral, it's spiritual resistance. Pennywise preys on fear, on those who yield to it. But Will refuses to yield. His strength, his ability to look the town's ugliness in the eye without flinching, foreshadows his son Mike's destiny decades later, to confront it when everyone else runs. Yet, even as Will stands tall, Derry fights back with quiet, poisonous persistence. The townsfolk whisper that the Hanlons don't belong, the same way they whispered about Hank. The hatred feels human, but the show makes sure we understand. It's being fed from below. Every cruel word, every sneer, every lie. It is listening, smiling in the dark. The racism subplot doesn't just add realism, it reveals the mechanism of horror. It doesn't have to terrorize Derry all the time, it simply infects it. Lets people do the rest. Hate, after all, is just another form of fear. And fear is Pennywise's favorite meal. In a town where cruelty hides behind small-town smiles, the most human voice comes from Charlotte Hanlon, a woman who hasn't yet fallen under Derry's trance. As she walks through downtown, the scene looks idyllic at first. Storefronts open, the sun warm, children laughing. But then the sound shifts, that laughter turns sharp, and we realize those children are tormenting another kid in broad daylight while the adults simply pass by. No one looks twice. No one intervenes. And that's when Charlotte blurts out the line that cuts through the entire show like a blade. Why is no one stopping this? It's a simple question, but in Derry, it's practically blasphemy. The people around her glance up, uncomfortable, even annoyed, as if she's the one disrupting peace. That's the moment the series exposes its deepest truth. Derry isn't cursed because it lives there. It lives there because the people let it. The town's willful ignorance is the soil Pennywise feeds on. Every time someone looks away from cruelty, every time a neighbor chooses politeness over decency, it grows stronger. The cinematography makes that theme unmistakable. The camera trails Charlotte as she spins, trying to make eye contact with the adults on the street. The frame warps slightly, colors draining, the background blurring until everyone around her feels like mannequins, alive but hollow. She's the only person moving with urgency, the only one still capable of moral outrage, and that makes her look insane in a town that calls indifference normal. This scene isn't about the bullies or even the child being attacked. It's about the disease of apathy, the quiet epidemic that defines Derry. The show uses Charlotte as a mirror for the audience, the rational voice every viewer has had while watching King's stories unfold. Why doesn't anyone help? Why doesn't anyone see? And now we get our answer. They can't. Pennywise's influence doesn't just create fear, it numbs it. Adults in Derry live inside a fog of psychological hypnosis, a permanent denial spell that keeps them functional but blind. Charlotte's question is the first real act of resistance in the episode. Not with weapons, not with courage, but with awareness. By acknowledging the madness around her, she momentarily cracks Derry's illusion. It's the same power the Losers Club will one day harness as adults. The ability to remember, to see, to name the evil out loud. Because in Derry, silence is complicity, and awareness is rebellion. The brilliance of this moment lies in how understated it feels. No music swell, no dramatic camera push, just a woman breaking through the social hypnosis for 1 second and the whole town flinching like she's committed a crime. That's the moral spine of Welcome to Derry. Not every monster hides in the sewer. Some are standing right there on Main Street, pretending not to see. The next sequence unfolds in the most ordinary setting imaginable, a school classroom. But in Derry, ordinary never stays that way for long. We see Will Hanlon's son, a young, curious boy who's just moved to town, walking into class late on his first day. The teacher snaps, "Are you new to the concept of time, Mr. Hanlon?" And the boy's quiet reply, a small musing about relativity, says everything. He's not just smart, he's a thinker, a dreamer, a kid who looks at the stars when everyone else stares at the ground. And that curiosity, in Derry, is a dangerous thing. The classroom scene might look simple, but it's a masterclass in foreshadowing. On the surface, it's about a shy boy trying to fit in. Underneath, it's about generations. Will's family line isn't just another set of characters, it's the backbone of Derry's resistance. His son will one day grow up to Father Mike Hanlon, the historian of the Losers Club, the only one who never forgets. The Hanlons carry memory like other families carry sin. They're Derry's conscience, passed down from father to son, generation after generation. But if the Hanlons are the keepers of truth, the show reminds us that Derry also breeds its opposite. The teacher's last words are followed by a cold, cutting glance from Chief Clint Bowers, whose name instantly triggers recognition for fans. He's not just another cop, he's the ancestor of Butch Bowers and Henry Bowers, the violent bullies and abusers who terrorized the losers decades later. It's a chilling parallel, one bloodline built to fight fear, another built to spread it. The Hanlons and the Bowers represent the eternal cycle of Derry, light and darkness locked in generational war. The scene carries other subtleties too. Will's son sits alone, books stacked like walls, as other kids whisper and snicker. The camera lingers on their laughter just a beat too long, reminding us of how easily cruelty infects children here. In Derry, meanness isn't taught. It's inherited. It seeps through the air, through the town's water, through the stories parents tell their kids. The moment the new boy becomes the target, we know it is already circling. Then comes a science lesson about the major food groups, the nutrients the body needs to survive. It seems harmless until you realize it's a metaphor. The teacher's voice echoes like a sermon as she lists them, and the camera slowly pans to the drain at the back of the classroom, the faint sound of dripping water underscoring every word. It's the show's way of saying, while these kids learn what feeds them, it is learning what feeds on them. The feeding cycle has begun again, and yet, amid that quiet horror, there's a spark of hope. When Will's son later shares a glance with another outsider, Rich, a timid, awkward kid, you can feel something forming. A bond. The seed of another loser's club. They don't know it yet, but they're inheriting the same destiny their children will one day fulfill. It's not a chosen fate, it's Derry's gravitational pull. The evil buried beneath the town always calls its players to the stage. Heroes and villains alike, generation after generation. By the end of the scene, the camera lingers on Will outside, watching through the school fence as his son walks away. His expression says everything: pride, fear, and a quiet understanding that his boy is now part of something much bigger than he can explain. In Derry, innocence is temporary, and legacy is eternal. When the show shifts back to Ronnie Grogan, the atmosphere tightens. The horror stops lurking in the background and steps directly into her mind. It begins quietly. The flicker of a light, the echo of a drip, and then, without warning, she's plunged into one of the most disturbing sequences in Welcome to Derry so far, the womb scene. Ronnie finds herself trapped in a dark, pulsating space, walls of flesh closing in, covered in blood, bile, and the muffled sound of a heartbeat. She gasps for air as the camera twists and turns, the world around her throbbing like a living organism. It's not just body horror, it's psychological horror, shaped by guilt. The womb isn't random imagery, it's Ronnie's trauma made literal. She's reliving her mother's death during childbirth, an event she's been told about her entire life. Her very existence, her birth, came at the cost of another's life, and now, that guilt has grown up inside her, becoming part of its playground. This is how Welcome to Derry understands fear, not as something that hides in the dark, but as something that hides inside you. Ronnie's terror isn't about monsters under the bed, it's about what she can't stop remembering. She blames herself for leading the children to the theater, for surviving when others didn't, and for the fact that her father is now the town's scapegoat. IT doesn't need to attack her physically, it just needs to remind her it's over and over until her guilt becomes its doorway. Then it appears. In the shadows of the womb, a faint glow. 2 yellow eyes. Not the painted eyes of the clown, but the inhuman burning light of the deadlights. This is its true face. Emotionless, infinite, watching her from somewhere beyond comprehension. The way the show frames it is subtle genius. It never lunges, never screams. It just exists. Patient and ancient, feeding on the waves of panic rolling off her soul. The womb around her trembles and tightens as if it's absorbing her fear molecule by molecule. But this sequence isn't just shock, it's storytelling. The womb symbolizes rebirth through terror, the way Derry's victims are psychologically born into fear before they die. Ronnie's struggle here mirrors the larger cycle of Derry itself. Trauma giving birth to more trauma, guilt birthing denial, denial birthing monsters. Even the cinematography mimics childbirth. The screen contracting, light breaking through, Ronnie screaming as she claws her way out. When she finally snaps awake, drenched in sweat, the real world feels no safer. On her wall, posters for A Raisin in the Sun and Teenagers from Outer Space hang side by side. One about racial injustice, the other about alien invasion. Two metaphors for the world Ronnie lives in, a town that fears both difference and the unknown. Together they underline Welcome to Derry's central thesis, that the monsters we create, whether societal or supernatural, are often the same thing. And through it all, IT remains unseen but omnipresent. No clown makeup, no taunting voice, just the steady rhythm of fear working its way back to the surface. This is what makes Welcome to Derry so effective. It doesn't rely on spectacle. It understands that in Stephen King's world, terror isn't just what you see in the dark. It's what you remember when the lights come back on. This is where Welcome to Derry stops being just a prequel and starts rewriting the rules of the Stephen King universe. Midway through episode 2, the camera cuts from Derry's haunted streets to the clean, metallic halls of a US military base, and the tone changes completely. Suddenly, we're in a Cold War thriller. Files stamped classified, men in suits whispering, scientists staring at strange readings. And then the revelation drops. The military knows about IT. Not only that, they want to weaponize it. This is one of the boldest additions to King's mythology ever put on screen. Traditionally, IT's existence has been contained within Derry, unseen by the outside world, its horrors erased by the town's collective denial. But here, Welcome to Derry cracks that seal. Somewhere deep in government archives, there are documents describing an entity buried beneath the town, one that feeds on fear and distorts reality. To the military, it's not a demon or a god, it's a resource. We learn that the government has recruited Dick Halloran, the cook from The Shining, the man gifted with the shine, to help locate this entity. Halloran's psychic connection becomes their tool for mapping the unknown, and alongside him, they enlist Will Hanlon, the same veteran whose courage was hardened in the Korean War. His file is marked with something chilling: resistance to fear response. They want to test him, to see if a man who doesn't scare easily can stand against the thing that feeds on fear itself. The result is a narrative crossover unlike anything King ever wrote. A collision of The Shining, IT, and even Dreamcatcher, where the US government monitors a parasitic alien in Maine's forests. In Welcome to Derry, the lines blur. Is it a supernatural evil, or is it extraterrestrial? The military's obsession with its power mirrors the arms race. Fear as the ultimate weapon, Pennywise as the embodiment of mutually assured destruction. We get glimpses of their excavation project. Vast dig sites around Derry, machinery tearing through ancient soil, radar devices scanning for beacons. These beacons are fragments of the meteor that brought it to Earth millions of years ago, scattering pieces of its essence across Maine. The more they dig, the more Derry trembles, both literally and spiritually. And watching from the tree line, unseen by the soldiers, are figures who understand what's really happening, descendants of the Shakapewa tribe, the same people who once trapped IT, using the ritual of Chud. The show's brilliance lies in how it reframes the Cold War itself. The military's fear of Soviet power mirrors Derry's fear of IT. Both are invisible, both corrupt everything they touch, and both prove that fear, whether political or primal, can destroy nations as easily as it destroys towns. Pennywise becomes more than a monster. He becomes a metaphor for the weaponization of fear itself. Humanity's obsession with control, with dominance, with harnessing forces it doesn't understand. That's the real horror. This twist doesn't just expand the lore, it connects the dots across King's entire multiverse. IT, The Shining, Dreamcatcher. All stories about psychic power, human arrogance, and things that should never be touched. Welcome to Derry quietly builds that bridge, turning what was once an isolated evil into part of a larger cosmic ecosystem. The implications are massive. If the military knows about IT, how many other King horrors have they documented and failed to contain? The episode leaves us with a haunting visual, a warehouse full of military crates labeled Project Derry. In the corner, a red balloon drifts upward, brushing the fluorescent lights. A soldier looks up, confused, and smiles, for no reason at all. As the episode approaches its end, the story returns to the dig site, a desolate patch of earth on the outskirts of Derry where the military's curiosity has literally begun to tear open the town's past. Floodlights hum, engines rumble, and soldiers in cold gray uniforms watch as an excavator claws into the dirt. They think they're uncovering history. They're actually waking it up. Standing on the ridge above the pit is a native man, silent, unmoving, watching with an expression that isn't surprise. It's warning. He knows exactly what's beneath that soil. Fans of A.T. Chapter 2 will recognize what this implies. He's a descendant of the Shakapiwa tribe, the same people who once trapped it for 4 feeding cycles using the ritual of Chud, an ancient ceremony meant to contain the creature's chaos through unity and courage. These descendants are immune, in part, to its hypnosis. They see clearly what the rest of Derry cannot. The soldiers below, they think they're digging up meteor fragments. The truth is far worse. Their machines hit something solid, metal, not rock. And when they clear the mud away, the camera reveals a rusted 1930s car, perfectly preserved like a coffin. Inside, they find skeletons clutching guns, hats, and decayed bags of cash. It's the Bradley Gang, the same killers turned victims whose massacre we saw earlier in the episode. The car was buried miles from where history said it happened. That discrepancy is the point. Someone, or something, moved it here. The implication is chilling. The town's evil doesn't just kill, it cleans up. As the soldiers look on, one of them mutters, "This wasn't buried by accident." He's right. But before the thought can land, a strange wind sweeps through the pit. The floodlights flicker. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughs, faint, echoing, and possibly out of place. The native man turns away, murmuring something in his language, a prayer or perhaps a warning. You're digging up a curse, not a relic. That moment reframes everything we've seen. The military thinks it's performing archaeology. In reality, it's committing blasphemy. Derry isn't just haunted, it's alive, a living ecosystem built around its hibernation. By disturbing the ground, by chasing their beacons, the soldiers are doing exactly what Pennywise needs. They're feeding the cycle. In King's universe, evil doesn't die when you bury it. It waits for someone arrogant enough to dig it up. This is where Welcome to Derry channels the broader King mythology. The scene echoes the desecrations of the Shining's Overlook Hotel, built on a native burial site, and Pet Sematary's cursed Micmac ground. King's warning has always been the same. Some ground remembers, and now the military, in its quest to weaponize fear, has literally broken that ground open. The episode ends on a quiet, unsettling image. The dig site is empty, the machines powered down, the car half exposed in the dirt. A balloon drifts from the darkness of the forest. Slow, deliberate, crimson, and settles just above the car's hood. It doesn't pop, it just hovers there, swaying in the wind, as if marking the spot where fear has once again been reborn. That's Derry in a single frame, a place where the past never stays buried, where the living and the dead share the same soil, and where every act of discovery is just another form of invitation. And that brings us to the end of Welcome to Derry Episode 2, an hour that doesn't just add to Stephen King's mythology, it redefines it. What started as a story about a few haunted kids has expanded into a cosmic web of fear, memory, and human blindness. In this version of Derry, the evil isn't just under the streets. It's in the institutions, the traditions, the systems built to protect people but designed to keep them ignorant. Every scene in this episode feeds the same idea. Derry survives by forgetting. The adults don't see the blood because they've convinced themselves it's paint. The cops blame Hank instead of the monster because it's easier to hate a man than to face the truth. The military digs through sacred ground thinking they're defending their country, but all they're doing is giving it a front row seat to humanity's favorite pastime, weaponizing fear. We see how Derry works as a machine. The children grow up bullied into silence. The parents raise them not to ask questions. The officials bury the bodies, literally and figuratively. While Pennywise feeds on the panic everyone pretends isn't there. It's a perfect ecosystem of denial, and that's what makes this story timeless. IT doesn't need magic to survive. It just needs people to keep acting like Derry. What makes Episode 2 brilliant is how it layers the supernatural with the political and psychological. The Cold War paranoia, the racism, the generational trauma, the rituals of obedience, they all function as different faces of the same entity. Every lie told in Derry, every act of cruelty ignored, is another meal for IT. The red balloon isn't just a calling card anymore. It's a symbol of everything humans inflate with fear until it floats right back to them. By connecting it to The Shining, Dreamcatcher, and even Pet Sematary through its themes of desecration, psychic energy, and corruption, the show hints at a shared Stephen King universe, one where the monsters are less important than the people who let them in. And that's what makes this series feel so dangerous. It's not just expanding the lore, it's holding up a mirror. The final shot, that single balloon hovering over the unearthed car, says everything. The past is awake again. The military has cracked open what should have stayed sealed. The children are starting to see what the adults can't, and somewhere deep below Derry, something ancient opens its eyes. Because in this town, every act of fear, every scream, every secret buried under the dirt isn't just history, it's dinner. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to dive deeper into the hidden layers of King's universe, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and come back next week. Because Episode 3 promises to dig even deeper into the nightmare that built Derry.